So now we are going to make chocolate ganache. I have the dark chocolate here, and that's a couverture chocolate that has a really good flavor instead of using the artificial ones which are the compounds. So suggest using the couverture chocolate, and this ganache we are going to use for layered cakes, and so the ratio is a 1:2. So there is 2 parts of chocolate and 1 part of cream here, and this is specifically for working with cakes, filling and frosting cakes, and we will not be using the same ratio for pastries when you are going to use it for tarts and other places. Okay. So now there are different methods in making ganache. So the first thing is to put both the chocolate and the cream together and then microwave it in 30-second bursts, and then keep mixing them and do that in 3 or 4 bursts until the chocolate and the cream combines well with each other. And once that is done, then your ganache making is over. Now the second method is to have the cream boiling in the saucepan, and then allow the cream to heat up, and you start seeing the bubbles on the edges of the saucepan. Then you pour that cream into the chocolate, close it and allow the chocolate to take the heat from the cream, and then you could mix it so the chocolate and the cream combines well with each other. Then the third method is what I'm going to do, to double boil both the chocolate and the cream together. Now for which we just have to have a stove. I'm using an induction stove, but you could use a stove top as well, the gas one. Okay, so you just need about an inch of the water in the saucepan, and then begin to heat. Allow the water to start boiling, and then we have to have the chocolate in a bowl so it could fit into the saucepan like that around the edges of the saucepan that we are using, but you don't want the bottom of the bowl to touch the water. So the water level has to be limited, so the bottom of the bowl in which the chocolate is placed doesn't touch the water. And you can also use a stainless steel bowl in place of the glass bowl that I am using. And now into this I am going to pour the cream. And now once I start feeling that the water in the saucepan begins to boil, then I'm just going to reduce the flame and allow it to be on the medium flame, so it doesn't have to really keep bubbling all the time. Okay, so now I'm just going to use the spatula and mix the chocolate and the cream. I'm also checking if the water in the saucepan has started to boil. Okay, so the water is starting to boil. I just want to reduce the flame, go to medium, and then allow the bottom of this glass bowl in which the chocolate and cream are placed to take up some heat, and let the chocolate melt, and then we have to keep mixing the chocolate and the cream together. So you can see the chocolate is beginning to melt at the bottom. You just want to keep stirring and allowing all the chunks of the chocolate to take in the heat and melt. So see, the chocolate is melting and slowly getting combined with the cream. Now we can't even see the traces of the cream, but we still have more chunks of the chocolate that needs to be melted. I'm just going to continue mixing until I have no traces of any chunks of the chocolate. Then we have a really very creamy and shiny ganache. Also, we just shouldn't allow it to um, heat up so much because it will scorch the chocolate, so we need to keep stirring it occasionally. And that's the dark chocolate that I have used. So the percentage of the chocolate is about 45 percentage, so you can use anywhere between 45 to 55 percentage, and if you really like the bittersweet, then you could go beyond the 55 percentage of the chocolate as well. But then if you feel the 45 by itself is like, it's all a preference of how bitter we'd like the chocolate to be in our desserts or in our cake, or what would you like to give your clients when you're making them in in places of orders. So if you feel the 45 is like too bitter, then it naturally is not. But then if for preference sake, if you think that 45 percentage of the chocolate, okay, so then you could use half of the dark to half of milk. So in place of the dark chocolate that is there in the recipe, you could take out half of it and then replace that with half of milk and follow the same procedure. Just keeping mixing it a little frequently because I have just about few chunks of the chocolate, so I'm distributing the heat by mixing it. Don't have to use a whisk, we don't want to incorporate any air at this point, so you can just use the spatula. So I'm now checking if there are any chocolate chunks. So it feels like clean, everything is combined. So I just want to switch off the stove and take the bowl with the ganache and just want to give it a mix and check for any chunks at this stage. You can see it is like really very shiny and the chocolate and the cream is mixed up really well. Okay, so once the ganache is made, we just want to allow it to set. We want the chocolate to crystallize back, and we can't use right after it's made. Okay, so for that step we want the ganache to be stored in room temperature for 8 hours and then we could use. But if you are in a place where your room temperature is quite warm, you can put the ganache to set in the fridge for a few hours before using, or allow it to be in the refrigerator overnight. Now ganache is something that you have to make for your cakes or any desserts, and when you know that you're going to use ganache the next day, making ganache can be part of the pre-preparation. You can make it the previous day and then allow it to set it in room temperature for about 4 hours, after which you can put it in the refrigerator, the fridge, for overnight storing. Okay, so now the storage, how do we do it, is to have a cling wrap, and then we need to allow the cling wrap to go and touch the surface of the ganache. Okay, so you're just not going to cover the top of the bowl alone, you're going to allow the cling wrap to touch the surface of the ganache. We're doing that so when the ganache is setting, is crystallizing, the surface of the ganache would start having a dry film, And when you're going to mix the ganache, after it is set, then the dry specks, the film will be formed into specks that will just combine with the entire ganache and allowing it not to be really very smooth like how we have made now. So let the top be touching the cling wrap, after which this I am going to set it aside for 4 hours. And then if I have to use it, then I could use it like maybe after 8 hours, or if I am going to use it for the next day, then after 4 hours, then I could keep that in the refrigerator. And before I have to use it the next day or the other next day, then I have to take it out of the fridge at least 2 hours before and allow it to thaw. Thawing something is to take it out from the fridge while it is in the firmer state than its natural behavior. Though we have to take it from the fridge, keep it in the room temperature for about 2 hours, so the ganache comes back to its original texture and consistency. And then once that is ready, we will be using that to lay our cakes.